She had everything: a company, a future, a life she'd built from nothing. Then one accident took her legs, and her own father decided to take the rest. Owen Carter is just trying to get his daughter home. Claire Whitmore is just trying to survive the next 24 hours without losing her mind. When a canceled bus throws two strangers together in the middle of Boston's South Station, neither of them expects what happens next. Because sometimes the person who saves your life doesn't do it with grand gestures or dramatic speeches. Sometimes they just ask you the right question at exactly the wrong moment. And the whole architecture of the lie you've been living comes crashing down. If this story hits you somewhere real, hit that like button and drop a comment with the city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The 4:47 to Providence was late. That was the first thing Owen Carter noticed when he walked through the main doors of South Station with Lily's hand in his and her pink backpack bumping against her shoulders. The big board above the main concourse showing a blinking yellow delayed next to the Providence line. No estimated departure time listed, just that single word hanging there like a bad omen. "Dad," Lily said, tugging his hand, "does delayed mean we're not going?" "Means we're waiting," Owen said. "For how long?" "Don't know yet." She made the face she always made when an answer didn't satisfy her. A tight little frown that reminded him so sharply of her mother that his chest did the familiar thing it did. A quick squeeze and then release, like a hand closing and opening. Lily was 6 years old, and she had Rebecca's exact expression of skeptical disappointment. It showed up at least 3 times a day, and every time it did, Owen felt simultaneously like laughing and like sitting down somewhere quiet for a long while. He steered her toward the departures board to get a better look. The station was loud in the way that large public spaces get loud on a Thursday afternoon. Not chaotic, but layered. A constant background hum of rolling suitcases and gate announcements, and a kid somewhere near the food court crying about something. The smell was the standard mixture of fast food and coffee and the specific institutional cleanliness of places that get mopped multiple times a day but never quite lose the smell of 1,000 people passing through them. "Can I get a pretzel?" Lily asked. "We just ate lunch." That was a long time ago. Owen checked his watch. It had been 2 hours. That's not a long time. It feels like a long time. He looked at her. She looked back at him with the expression of someone who had made a completely reasonable point and was simply waiting for the other party to acknowledge it. He sighed. "After I figure out what's happening with the train." He pulled out his phone and navigated to the train status page, while Lily held on to 2 of his fingers and swiveled on her heels, watching people. That was one of her habits. She watched people the way other kids watch cartoons, with focused, unblinking attention, narrating quietly to herself things Owen could never quite make out. He'd asked her once what she was saying, and she told him she was telling herself the stories of where everyone was going. He hadn't known what to do with that, except feel a complicated kind of pride. The status update wasn't helpful. Service disruption due to track maintenance. Estimated delay, 45 to 90 minutes. Updates to follow. 45 to 90 minutes. That was the railroad's way of saying they had no idea. Owen pocketed his phone and looked around for somewhere to sit. The main waiting area was filling up. The Providence delay had apparently backed up a few connecting services, and people were staking out spots on the rows of metal benches with the resigned patience of experienced travelers. He spotted a gap near the far end of one row, near the big windows that faced the platform level, and steered Lily toward it. That was when he saw her. She was parked. That was the word that came to him, though he immediately felt uncomfortable with it. Positioned near the windows, slightly apart from the nearest group of waiting passengers, in a manual wheelchair. She was around his age, maybe a year or 2 younger, with dark hair pulled back from her face in a way that looked like it had started the morning as something more polished and had come slightly undone. She was wearing a charcoal blazer over a white shirt, dark slacks, low heels that Owen registered with a confused half-second before his brain recalibrated. She had a leather laptop bag across the armrests of the wheelchair, and she was looking at her phone with an expression of concentrated neutrality that Owen recognized as the expression of someone who was actively working to appear fine. He wouldn't have thought anything more about her except that Lily, who had no filter and no sense of social geometry, walked directly toward the empty seat next to the woman and climbed up onto it before Owen could redirect her. "Hi," Lily said to the woman. The woman looked up from her phone. Something shifted in her expression. A quick recalibration, a small softening. "Hi." "We're waiting because of delays," Lily said. "Our train is 45 to 90 minutes late, which means they don't know." The woman's mouth moved toward something that wasn't quite a smile, but was in that direction. That's a very accurate interpretation. Owen reached Lily and put a hand on her shoulder. Sorry, he said to the woman. She goes where she wants. It's fine, the woman said. She glanced at the empty seat on Lily's other side, the one Owen was clearly gravitating toward. You can sit. There's room. He sat. Lily was already watching the platforms through the window, narrating to herself at a volume just below comprehensible. The woman went back to her phone. Owen pulled out his own phone and drafted a text to his sister in Providence, letting her know they'd be late. He'd been planning to stay the weekend. It was something they'd started doing after Rebecca died. These low-stakes visits that didn't require much of anyone. Just Lily playing with her cousins, and Owen sitting in his sister's kitchen drinking coffee, while Carol pretended not to check on him, and he pretended not to know she was doing it. It had become one of the small, reliable things he counted on, which he was aware was a little sad, but which he'd long stopped trying to argue himself out of. His phone buzzed with a reply from Carol almost immediately. No worries. More wine for me while I wait. Is Lily eating anything other than pretzels? He almost smiled. Sent back. Currently negotiating a pretzel ceasefire. Carol, Godspeed. He put the phone down and became aware that Lily had shifted from watching the platforms to watching the woman next to her with the same focused attention she turned on strangers and crowds. He started to say something, but the woman had already noticed. What? The woman asked Lily. Not unkindly. More like someone genuinely curious about what was coming. What are you working on? Lily asked. Owen winced slightly. Lily, logistics, the woman said. Lily considered this. What's that mean? Figuring out how things move from one place to another. Lily chewed on this. Like trains? More like products. Things people need, getting them from where they're made to where people can buy them. She paused. I run a company that does that. Oh. Lily seemed to find this interesting. Do you have a big office? 24th floor. Lily's eyes went wide. Do you have a good view? Very good view. Dad, Lily said, turning to Owen, she has a view from the 24th floor. I heard, Owen said. We live on the 2nd floor. I know where we live. Our view is a parking lot. The woman made a sound that was clearly a suppressed laugh. Owen looked at her and found that the neutrality had cracked a little. There was something more present in her face now, something less like a controlled performance. Sorry, he said again. She's direct. I can see that. The woman looked at Lily. I like it. Most people talk around things. She never does, Owen said. Must be nice. There was something in the way she said it. Not wistful exactly, but weighted, like the words meant more than their surface. Owen didn't push on it. He'd learned over the past 2 years that sometimes people said things like that as a door left slightly ajar, and sometimes they said it as a way of closing a subject, and the only way to tell the difference was to wait and see whether they said anything else. She didn't say anything else. He watched the platforms. Lily had gone back to narrating to herself, something about a man with a very large suitcase and where he might be going. The station sounds moved around them. I'm Owen, he said after a while. This is Lily. She looked at him. A beat passed. He had the impression she was deciding something. Claire, she said. The delay extended to 90 minutes at the 1-hour mark. The announcement came over the PA in the flat, effectless voice of recorded messages everywhere, advising passengers on the Providence service to check the board for updates and apologizing for the inconvenience. Around them, people shifted and checked their phones, and a few got up to get food. Lily, who had been patiently awaiting the resolution of the pretzel negotiation, turned to Owen with an expression of vindicated patience. 90 minutes, she said. Yes. That's a long time. It is. I think a pretzel would be appropriate, she said. Owen looked at Claire. Pretzel run. You want anything? Claire shook her head, then seemed to reconsider. Coffee, if they have it. Black. Owen took Lily to the concession stand near the middle of the concourse. Lily selected a pretzel with the seriousness of someone making a significant financial decision, examining 3 options before settling on the largest one. Owen got 2 coffees. When they came back, Claire was on her phone again, but she ended the call quickly. Or maybe the call ended itself. Owen had the impression from the set of her shoulders that it hadn't been a pleasant one. She took the coffee without comment, wrapped both hands around it. "Thank you," she said after a moment. "Don't mention it." Lily had settled back into her seat and was pulling apart her pretzel piece by piece, feeding herself in small, systematic bites. Claire watched her for a second with something that looked almost like hunger. Not for food, but for the simplicity of it, the uncomplicated absorption. "How old is she?" Claire asked. 6, Owen said. 7 in October. "She's great." "She really is." He said it simply, without deflection, because it was true, and he'd given up the reflexive parental modesty about 2 years ago when there wasn't anyone else at home to trade the role with. Lily was great. She was also exhausting and demanding, and she asked questions at 6 in the morning that he didn't have the philosophical framework to answer, but she was great. "Just the two of you?" Claire asked. It wasn't an intrusive question the way she asked it, more like she was building a picture carefully, filling in shapes. "Just the two of us," he said. "Her mom passed away 2 years ago." Claire's expression shifted, not into the careful sympathy face he was used to, the one people put on that he'd come to find both touching and slightly suffocating. She just looked at him directly and said, "I'm sorry. That's a hard thing." "It is," he said. No more than that. He appreciated it. "What do you do?" she asked. "For work?" "I teach high school, history." "Do you like it?" He thought about it honestly. "Most days. Today I'm on the tail end of a week with 30 juniors who haven't read anything I assigned them in 2 weeks, and I'm taking a weekend in Providence to recover, so—" She almost smiled. "Fair enough." Lily, who had apparently been listening while pretending not to, said to Claire, "He's a really good teacher. His students like him." "How do you know that?" Owen asked. "Because you know all their names," Lily said, as if this were obvious, "and you talk about them like they're interesting." Owen wasn't sure what to say to that. Claire was looking at him with an expression he couldn't categorize. "She does that," Owen said, "makes observations that are more accurate than they should be." "She's paying attention," Claire said. "Most people aren't." There was something in her voice when she said it, a specific weight, like she was speaking from direct experience of being on the wrong end of inattention. Owen filed it away without picking at it. The next 20 minutes moved the way time moves in waiting rooms and delayed terminals. Not fast, not slow, but in the specific suspended way of spaces that exist between other things. Lily finished her pretzel and fell into a loose, half-dozing state against Owen's arm, not sleeping exactly but recharging. Owen drank his coffee. Claire worked on her laptop with the quiet, focused efficiency of someone who defaulted to productivity when stillness got uncomfortable. He wasn't watching her exactly, but he was aware of her in the peripheral way you become aware of someone you've been sitting next to for an hour. She was good at what she was doing. He could see that even without knowing what it was, the speed and precision of it, the way she moved between documents without losing her place. But every few minutes her phone would light up on the armrest of her wheelchair, and she would look at it and then deliberately not answer it. And each time she did this, something in her posture got slightly tighter. After the 4th or 5th time, she turned the phone face down. Owen said nothing. A few minutes passed. "Is it always like this?" Claire asked. She was still looking at her screen, but the words were clearly directed at him. "Like what?" "Her, She gestured vaguely with one hand. "The ease of it, the two of you." Owen considered the question. "Not always," he said. "There are days that are pretty rough. She has meltdowns. I lose my patience. We had a 40-minute standoff last month over whether socks were mandatory." "Who won?" "She did. She always wins the sock ones. I don't know why I keep trying." He looked at Lily, who had fully dozed off now against his arm, mouth slightly open. "But on balance? Yeah. It's mostly like this." "How do you do that?" Claire asked. You lost someone, and you just—" She stopped, started again. "You seem present. That's not nothing." "I had to be," Owen said. "That's the whole thing about kids. They don't let you disappear. Lily needed me to be there, so I was there. On the bad days I was there badly, but I was there." He paused. "She saved me as much as I saved her, probably." Claire was quiet for a moment. "That's a good way to need someone," she said. He looked at her. She was looking at the turned-over phone. "The calls," he said. Not aggressively, just naming the thing. She didn't answer for a second, then, "My father." You don't have to. He wants to know where I am. She said it flatly. He usually does. Owen said nothing. Sometimes silence was the right tool. Claire turned back to her laptop but didn't type anything. Her hands were on the keyboard, but still. I'm supposed to be on that bus tomorrow, she said. The one that just got canceled. Well, my bus is tomorrow morning. I was taking the train today to stay overnight. Where are you headed? A beat. A care facility, she said. Long-term residential. Owen heard the particular way she said it. Not, I'm going to, but I'm supposed to be going to, as if there were a gap between the two things. Is that what you want? He asked. She turned and looked at him. It was a direct look, assessing, like she was deciding whether he had the right to have asked that. He held it without flinching. No, she said. And then, more quietly, no, it's really not. Ba-bam. The announcement came at the 3-hour mark. We regret to inform passengers on the Providence service that due to an extended maintenance issue, this evening's service has been canceled. Passengers are advised to check the MBTA website for alternative travel options and rebooking assistance. We apologize for the significant inconvenience. The waiting area reacted in the layered way of public spaces absorbing bad news. A collective exhale, a scramble for phones. A few people already moving toward the customer service desk with the fixed expressions of people ready to be irritated. Lily jolted awake against Owen's arm and said, What happened? Train's canceled, Owen said. She processed this. So we're not going to Aunt Carol's? Not tonight. Maybe tomorrow if I can get seats. Can we still eat dinner? Yeah, Bug. We can still eat dinner. He looked at Claire, who had already opened her phone and was looking at it with the expression of someone reading something they'd been expecting and dreading. He could see without looking closely that there were multiple missed calls. Train's gone, he said. I know. She put the phone back down face up this time. She was already thinking, he could see it, working through something, the faint movement of muscles around her jaw that meant concentration. You have somewhere to stay tonight? He asked. I'll figure something out. Do you have someone you can call? A friend? Or, my friends are… She stopped, started again differently. I haven't been great at maintaining those, she said. It came out with a faint edge of honesty that he suspected cost or something. Owen looked at Lily, who was watching Claire with the open attentiveness she reserved for people she had decided she liked. Come have dinner with us, Owen said. Claire looked at him. I know a diner about 4 blocks from here, he said. It's not fancy. They have good soup and the booths are wide. We were going to eat anyway. He shrugged. You don't have to eat with strangers if you'd rather not, but the offer's there. She was quiet for a moment. He could see her weighing it, the self-sufficient reflex against something else. The soup, Lily said to Claire very seriously. It's really good soup. Claire looked at Lily. Something in her face moved. Okay, she said. Callahan's was the kind of diner that had been on the same corner for long enough that the neighborhood had changed 3 times around it, and it had absorbed each change without really changing itself. The booths were wide. Owen had been right about that. And the lighting was the warm amber of places that understood the value of not being too bright. The laminated menus were slightly sticky in the corners. The coffee was strong and arrived in thick white mugs without being asked for. The host, a large man in his 50s who knew Owen by name, which made Claire raise an eyebrow, pushed a table slightly aside to clear the wheelchair approach to a corner booth without making a production of it, and they settled in with the easy organization of people who'd already spent 3 hours negotiating shared space. Lily got the children's menu and immediately began the serious work of choosing between chicken fingers and grilled cheese. Owen ordered soup and a sandwich. Claire studied the menu for a moment and then put it down and ordered the same soup Owen had ordered, which felt like a small concession towards something. You come here a lot, Claire said. We live about 6 blocks that way, Owen said, pointing vaguely northeast. Lily went through a phase about 8 months ago where this was the only place she'd eat dinner. We came every night for about 3 weeks. What ended the phase? She decided she liked pasta, Lily said without looking up from her coloring sheet. Now I like both. Culinary growth, Claire said. She said culinary, Lily told Owen. I know. That's a grown-up food word. She is a grown-up, Owen said. Lily considered this as if it were new information. Then she went back to her coloring. Claire's hands were wrapped around the coffee mug. She looked more at ease here than she had in the station. The slight tension in her shoulders had loosened a degree or two, and the controlled neutrality of her expression had softened into something less defensive. She wasn't performing fine anymore. She was just sitting with them in a diner, which was something different. "Tell me about the company," Owen said. "The logistics one." She looked at him. "You actually want to know?" "Yes?" She seemed to take a moment to decide whether she believed him. Then she started talking, not with the careful neutrality of a prepared answer, but in the way people talk about things they built themselves, with the specific granular enthusiasm that only comes from knowing something from the inside. She'd started Whitmore Logistics 6 years ago, at 24. With capital, she'd raised herself in a business model that cut out several redundant layers of middlemen in regional supply chains. The company now handled distribution contracts for a network of mid-sized manufacturers across New England. She had 63 employees. Her fourth quarter projections were strong. She talked about it like it was alive, like it was something she'd grown. "That's not small," Owen said. "No," she said, "it's not." "So when you say you run a company, I mean I built it." She said it plainly, without apology. "From nothing. Raised the capital myself because no one was going to hand it to a 24-year-old. Spent the first 2 years working 16-hour days out of a 2-room office in Somerville. Lost 3 clients in 1 month in year 3 and thought I was done." She paused. "I wasn't done." "What happened?" Owen asked. "I rebuilt the pitch. Went back to the clients who'd left and showed them the data I'd been collecting for a year. Numbers don't lie. 2 of the 3 came back." Owen was quiet for a moment. Across the table, Lily had stopped coloring and was watching Claire with an expression of complete attention, chin in one hand. "You know a lot," Lily said. Claire blinked. "About supply chains specifically. About how to not give up," Lily said. Claire opened her mouth, closed it. Something in her expression went briefly unguarded. "That too," she said. "Yeah." Ticked. The food came and they ate, and the conversation moved through the easy randomness of people discovering each other across a table. Owen's students, Lily's opinions about various teachers at her school, detailed, opinionated, delivered with the confidence of someone who'd given the subject serious thought. Claire's original plan to study engineering before she pivoted to business. Owen's theory that history taught you more about human nature than psychology did, which Claire argued with in a way that suggested she'd thought about related things from different angles, which led to a conversation that was genuinely interesting rather than politely interesting, which was a distinction Owen had come to value. He watched the way Claire spoke when she stopped being careful, the speed of her thinking, the way she'd drop a sentence halfway through and restart it because a better formulation had arrived, the hallmark of someone whose mind moved faster than their mouth, which was not a common thing. She had a dry humor she deployed sparingly, but when she did it landed cleanly, without effort. He found himself thinking, "She's one of the smartest people I've sat across from in years." What he also noticed, what he couldn't quite set aside, was the way that quality seemed to be something she was only now remembering she had, like someone rediscovering a room in their own house they'd forgotten was there. She would make a point and then almost visibly brace for something, some response, some correction, some pulling back, that didn't come. And he would watch her recalibrate again, adjust again to the fact that no one at this table was waiting for her to be wrong. He didn't say any of this. It wasn't his thing to say. But he noticed it. At some point, Owen wasn't precisely tracking when, Lily had climbed from her side of the booth to Claire's side and situated herself close enough that Claire had to shift the laptop bag slightly to give her room. Claire had looked at Owen with an expression that was half "is this okay" and half pure surprise, and Owen had shrugged in the way he'd learned to shrug about Lily's spatial decisions, which was, "I genuinely cannot predict this child, and I've stopped trying." Lily had settled with her coloring sheet and was now narrating her color choices to Claire at regular intervals. "Blue," she said, "for the horse." "Horses aren't usually blue," Claire said. "This one is," Lily said. "Her name is Margaret." "Margaret is a very dignified name for a blue horse." "I know," Lily said with satisfaction. Owen watched them across the table. He thought about things he did not put into words. He thought about how much space 2 people could fill in a room just by paying attention to each other. He thought about the specific thing a 6-year-old did, which was that she didn't see the wheelchair first. She'd barely registered it. She'd seen a person who answered her questions honestly and had a view from the 24th floor and knew a fancy food word, and that was enough. He thought about how rarely that happened to Claire. He'd have bet money on it without having asked. The check came. Owen paid it before Claire could organize her bag, and she gave him a look. "You didn't have to." "I know," he said. She let it go. Outside, the evening had settled into the particular clarity of early autumn in Boston. The air just cold enough to register, the streets still busy with the tail end of the commute crowd. They stood on the sidewalk outside Callahan's, the easy inevitability of the end of something sitting between them. "Do you have a hotel?" Owen asked. "I'll book something," she said. "There's a Marriott about—" "There's an extended stay place 3 blocks from here," Owen said. "It's not glamorous, but it's accessible. I've seen people in wheelchairs use it. The front entrance is flat." She looked at him. "I'm not saying because you need me to tell you," he said quickly. "I'm saying because I know the neighborhood, and it's useful information." She nodded slowly. "Thank you. I'll look it up." He gave her the name. She put it in her phone. "I have a bus," she said, then seemed to catch herself. "Tomorrow morning." "I know," he said. Neither of them said anything else about it. Lily had been quiet through this exchange, one hand loosely in Owen's, looking between the two adults with the specific attention she gave to conversations she sensed were about more than what was being said. She looked at Claire now with the directness that had characterized the whole evening. "Are you going to be okay?" she asked Claire. Claire looked at her. Owen didn't intervene. "I don't know," Claire said after a moment. She said it like she hadn't meant to say it, like honesty had slipped out through a gap. Lily seemed to take this in. She reached out and briefly touched Claire's hand with 2 fingers. Just a touch, quick and light, the way children make contact when they don't have words, and then stepped back to Owen's side. "Okay," Lily said, as if this settled something. Claire stared at her own hand where Lily had touched it. "Thank you," she said. Her voice was slightly different than it had been. Not broken, but different. Owen said goodnight. They walked one direction, Claire wheeled another, and the street between them filled back in with people and the ordinary sounds of a Thursday evening in a city that didn't stop moving for anyone's particular crisis. But something had started. He didn't know what exactly. Neither did she. Claire booked the extended stay hotel Owen had mentioned. She didn't know why exactly. There had been 2 other options closer to the station, both with better reviews, both easier to reach from where she was standing. But she typed in the name he'd given her and booked it, and told herself it was because the entrance was flat. The room was on the ground floor. It smelled like carpet cleaner, and faintly of whatever someone had cooked in the small kitchenette 2 tenants ago. The bed was too soft on the left side. The bathroom door was wide enough for the wheelchair, but the turning radius inside was tight enough that she knocked her left wheel against the vanity twice before she figured out the angle. She lay in bed for an hour watching the ceiling, her phone face down on the nightstand, listening to the muffled sounds of the city rearranging itself for the night. Her father had called 7 times. She knew what the calls would sound like because they always sounded the same. The careful voice he used when he was managing her, the one that was soft and concerned on the surface, and underneath it ran a current she'd spent the last 14 months learning to identify. It sounded like love. It wasn't love, or at least it wasn't only love. It was control wearing love's clothing, and the fact that she still couldn't always tell the difference was the thing that scared her most about herself. The accident had been 14 months ago. A car had run a red light at the intersection of Commonwealth and Exeter on a wet October morning and hit the passenger side of the cab she was in, and when she woke up in the ICU 2 days later, her father was sitting by the bed holding her hand, and the expression on his face was one she'd never seen on him before. Something raw and unguarded, genuinely terrified. She had held on to that expression for a long time afterward. She'd let it do a lot of work. He'd moved quickly in those first weeks. He'd hired the care team before she was out of the hospital, arranged the apartment modifications, taken over the operational oversight of Whitmore Logistics temporarily, just until you're back on your feet, the phrase delivered without apparent awareness of its cruelty, and gradually, seamlessly, restructured her life into something he managed on her behalf. He'd done it so smoothly that she hadn't registered the full shape of it until she was already inside it, like a room whose walls had moved an inch a day until one morning you noticed you couldn't touch both sides at once, and then you could. The care facility had been presented 3 months ago as a suggestion, then as a recommendation, then as something the doctors thought was best. She'd read the brochures. It was a residential program in Connecticut, very nice, very well reviewed, the kind of place where the word rehabilitation got used in every other sentence as a way of making confinement sound like a service. Her room at the facility would be smaller than this hotel room. She would have a schedule. There would be therapists and structured activities and a visiting protocol that her father would manage. She would have no access to her own company's systems. That had been in the fine print, buried in the section about minimizing external stressors during the recovery process. She turned onto her side and looked at the dark window. She thought about Lily touching her hand. She thought about how the kid had asked, "Are you going to be okay with the simplicity of someone who genuinely expected an answer, who hadn't already decided what the answer was, who wasn't afraid of what the answer might be?" And she'd heard herself say, "I don't know," which was the first honest answer she'd given anyone in months, and the world had not ended. Lily had just nodded and stepped back to her father's side like honesty was the most ordinary thing. Owen hadn't reacted to it either. He just let it land and stayed there. She wasn't used to people who stayed still when things got uncomfortable. She'd been surrounded for a long time by people who managed, who arranged, redirected, reframed, solved. Her father, her father's lawyers, the medical team her father had retained, the assistant her father had hired to manage her calendar after she'd let her own assistant go. They all meant well, probably, or at least they all operated under the presumption that they knew what was best for her better than she did, which sometimes presented as meaning well. She reached over and turned her phone right side up, looked at the screen. 8 missed calls now. 3 from her father, 2 from the care facility's intake coordinator, 2 from a number she didn't recognize but suspected was her father's attorney, and 1 from Marcus, her COO, who was the only person at the company her father hadn't managed to freeze her out of contact with, probably because Marcus was careful and loyal and had figured out the geography of the situation and navigated it with precision. She called Marcus back. He picked up on the second ring. "Hey, you okay?" "Train was canceled," she said. I'm in a hotel." A pause. "Your dad called me." "I figured." "He wants me to arrange a car for you tomorrow to the facility." "Of course he does." Another pause, longer this time. She could hear Marcus thinking. He was the kind of person who thought audibly, small sounds under his breath that you learned to read if you knew him well enough. "Claire," he said. "I know," she said. "What do you actually want to do?" She stared at the ceiling. "I want to run my company," she said. "That's what I want to do. I want to go into my office on the 24th floor and do the work I built that company to do." "Then do that," Marcus said. "It's not that simple." "Why not?" She didn't have a clean answer. That was the problem. The architecture of the situation had been built specifically to make it feel like the answer was complicated, layered with medical authority and legal language and the weight of her father's genuine fear for her, all stacked together until it was difficult to separate. This is genuinely hard. From "this is what someone wants you to believe." "He has power of attorney," she said. "Limited scope," Marcus said immediately. "We had the company attorney look at it. It covers medical decisions during incapacity. You're not incapacitated, Claire. You're in a wheelchair, and your father has convinced everyone, including maybe you, that those are the same thing." She was quiet. "I'm sorry," Marcus said. "That was—" "No," she said. "No, keep going." "The board is skittish," Marcus said. "Your dad has been in their ear for 3 months, and some of them are listening. But the votes aren't there for anything structural yet. If you came back and showed up, I mean really showed up, not just technically resumed your role, I think it turns. And if I go to the facility, then you're gone for 6 months minimum, and in 6 months, a lot can change." His voice was flat and even, the way he got when he was telling her something she needed to hear rather than what she wanted to hear. "I'm not saying that to scare you. I'm saying it because you asked me to always tell you the actual situation." "I know," she said. "Thank you." "Get some sleep," he said. "Whatever you decide, get some sleep first." She ended the call and put the phone on her chest and looked at the ceiling for a long time. Owen called his sister from the hotel he'd booked 2 blocks from the one he'd sent Claire to. Carol answered with the particular tone she used when she was genuinely curious, but trying to play it neutral. "So the train's canceled, you're in a hotel, and you've had dinner with a stranger," she said. Accurate summary, Owen said. Was she nice? She was interesting. That's different from nice. It's better than nice, Owen said. Carol was quiet for a moment in the way she got when she was processing something. She and Owen had the kind of relationship that had been forged partly by Rebecca's death. Not that they hadn't been close before, but grief had burned off a lot of the surface-level conversational habits and left something more direct underneath. Carol had been the first person to tell him, about 8 months in, that she thought he was using Lily as a way of not feeling things, and he'd been furious at her for 2 weeks and then realized she was right, and called her, and they'd sat on the phone for 40 minutes without saying much, and that had been enough. She in a bad situation? Carol asked. I think so, Owen said. I don't know the full picture. But you wanted to help. I pointed her to a hotel and gave her the soup. Owen, I know. You have a thing where you try to fix things for people, Carol said, which is good, usually. Sometimes it's not what they need. I know, he said. I didn't try to fix it. He paused. I asked her questions. I let her talk. And Lily? Lily sat on her side of the booth and colored a blue horse named Margaret. A beat. Then Carol laughed. A real one, sudden and warm. Of course she did. She asked Claire if she was going to be okay, Owen said. What did Claire say? She said she didn't know. And Lily? Just touched her hand, 2 fingers, and then moved on. Carol was quiet again. That kid, she said softly. Yeah, Owen said. He looked at the ceiling. Go to bed, Carol. We'll try to get the morning train. Both of you? He paused. Both of us, he said. Just Lily and me. He almost texted Claire in the morning. He had her number because they'd exchanged them outside Callahan's practically, in case there were scheduling questions about the morning trains. He stood in the small hotel bathroom at 7:15 with his phone in his hand, the contact pulled up, a message half composed in his head that he hadn't typed yet. Trains are back on schedule, just in case you hadn't checked. He didn't send it. She was a grown woman running a 63-person company. She knew how to check a train schedule. He put his phone in his pocket and went to wake Lily. South Station was different in the morning, less populated, the acoustics flatter without the crowd to absorb the sound. The big board showed the Providence trains running on schedule, first departure at 8:20. Owen got Lily a hot chocolate from the concession stand. She negotiated this with the same methodical patience she'd applied to the pretzel, and they settled in the waiting area to watch the board. He had not expected to see Claire there. She was near the same set of windows as the day before, which in retrospect made sense. Good sight lines, room to maneuver, out of the main flow of foot traffic. She was in the same blazer. Her laptop bag was across the armrests again. She was watching the arrivals board with an expression he couldn't read from this distance. Lily saw her at the same time he did and said, without preamble, Claire's back. I see her. Can we go say hi? If she wants to talk, yes, Owen said. Don't just walk up on her. Lily considered the distinction, which was a meaningful one she'd been working on for about a year. The difference between engaging people who were available for it and people who weren't. She had become reasonably good at reading the signals. She watched Claire for a moment. She's not busy, Lily said. She's just looking. That was accurate enough that Owen let them walk over. Claire looked up when they were close enough to register. Something moved across her face. A surprise she hadn't prepared for, and then something warmer underneath it. Morning, she said. Morning, Owen said. Didn't know if you'd still be here. I didn't know either, she said. It was an honest answer, more honest than the social situation required, which he'd come to expect from her. She looked at Lily. Hi? Hi, Lily said. Did you sleep okay? Reasonably, Claire said. The bed was a little soft. Ours too, Lily said. Dad says hotel beds are always either too hard or too soft. He's right. He's right about most things, Lily said. Not everything. He thought Margaret should be brown. Margaret's the horse. The blue one. He didn't understand. Claire looked at Owen. Brown would have been very conventional. I stand by it, Owen said. Horses are brown. Margaret isn't, Lily said firmly, and went to sit on the bench beside Claire with the same unselfconscious ease she'd shown the night before. Owen sat across from them. The morning light through the big windows was flat and pale, the kind of light that made everything look slightly temporary. He looked at Claire and could see, in the particular quality of her stillness, that she'd been up for hours. Not restless, resolved. Like someone who'd come to the end of a long argument with themselves. "Did you rebook?" he asked. She looked at him steadily. "I haven't decided," she said. He nodded. He didn't say anything else about it. The silence between them was the comfortable kind, the kind that had been earned by the previous evening rather than arrived at by accident. Lily was drawing on a receipt she'd found in the bottom of her backpack, constructing what appeared to be a neighborhood of some kind. Small square houses with smoke coming from chimneys in the particular way children drew smoke, perfect curling spirals. "She always draw?" Claire asked. "Always," Owen said. "We go through a lot of paper." "I used to draw," Claire said. She said it the way people say things about the past that have some weight to them. "When I was a kid, architecture mostly, buildings." "Why'd you stop?" She thought about it. "Got too focused on what I was actually building," she said. "The company. There wasn't room for things that didn't have a direct output." She paused. "I thought that was how it worked. That you had to trade one kind of building for another. Does it have to work that way?" "I don't know," she said. "I spent a year being told what was possible and what wasn't, and I think I stopped questioning where those lines were." Owen said nothing for a moment. Outside on the platform level, he could see the first train of the morning pulling in, the sound of it muffled by the glass, but still present, a low resonance that moved through the floor. "Can I ask you something?" he said. She looked at him. "The facility," he said. "Was it your doctor's recommendation? Your own doctor, not someone your father retained?" A long pause. "My doctor thought outpatient PT and regular check-ins were sufficient," she said. "She said I was doing well, better than expected." "So the facility was my father's decision," she said. "Yes." She said it simply, with no anger in it, which somehow made it heavier than anger would have. Lily was still drawing. The morning crowd was thickening around them, people with wheeled bags and coffee cups moving toward the platforms. "He thinks he knows what's best for me," Claire said. "I used to think that was the same as caring about me. I'm not sure anymore." "Those things can both be true," Owen said. "He can love you and still be wrong." She looked at him. "Yes," she said quietly. "That's exactly it. That's the thing I keep—" She stopped. "That's the thing I can't get past. Because if I say he's wrong, then I'm saying—" "You're saying you get to make your own choices," Owen said. She was quiet. "That's not an accusation," he said. "That's just the thing." She looked down at her hands on the armrests of her wheelchair. They were steady hands, he noticed. Capable hands. The hands of someone who'd spent years working with numbers and contracts and the small, precise details of a business she'd built cell by cell. They weren't the hands of someone who needed someone else to manage her life. "Marcus told me last night that the board votes aren't there yet," she said. "That if I came back and showed up, really showed up, it would probably turn. Marcus is your COO. He's been with me since year 2, she said. He's the only person in my orbit right now who talks to me like I'm still the person I was before." She paused. "It matters more than I knew how to say until last night." "That's what people who believe in you do," Owen said. "They act like you're the version of yourself you actually are, not the version someone else decided you are." Lily looked up from her drawing at that, as if something in the tone had registered, and looked between them with her measuring attention. Then she held up the receipt. On it was a small, careful sketch of a building with large windows, and on the roof, a tiny figure in what was clearly meant to be a wheelchair. "I drew your building," she told Claire. Claire stared at it. "The one with the view," Lily said. "The 24th floor." Claire took it from her, looked at it for a long moment. The figure on the roof was small and slightly lopsided. Lily's draftsmanship was limited by age, but it was clearly there, clearly placed at the top, clearly central. "Can I keep this?" Claire asked. "Yes," Lily said. "I drew it for you." Something in Claire's face shifted in the way that faces shift when something gets past the defenses, not with a crack but with a slow dissolve, like ice in water. She folded the receipt carefully and put it in her jacket pocket. "I used to love that office," she said. Her voice was slightly different. "I used to get there at 6 in the morning before anyone else and just stand at the window and look at the city and think about everything I was going to do that day, everything the company was going to do. I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. She paused. I haven't been back since the accident. Your father? He said I should wait until I was stronger. She said stronger with a slight edge, the smallest inflection on the word, barely there. I don't think he meant it badly. I think he genuinely believed it. But I waited, and every time I asked about going back, there was another reason to wait. And now there's a bus tomorrow, Owen said. And now there's a bus tomorrow, she repeated. She said it looking straight ahead at the platforms, at the morning light coming through the windows. And then she turned and looked at Owen, and he held the look, because there was something in it that required staying still. What would you do? She asked. In my position. He thought about it honestly, because she wasn't asking for comfort, and he knew it. She was asking for straight thinking from someone who didn't have a stake in the answer. I'd be scared, he said. Doing it your father's way is easier, at least for right now. Nobody's fighting you. Nobody's telling you that you're making a mistake. The path is cleared. He paused. But you'd spend the rest of your life wondering what would have happened if you'd taken the other one. That's not an answer. No, he said. It's not, because I don't think you actually need me to answer it. She looked at him. Why do you think that? Because you describe that company the way people describe things they love, he said. The way I describe Lily. The way I used to describe other things. He didn't elaborate on that. You know what you want to do? You've known since last night. You're just terrified, she said. Yeah, he said. Terrified is reasonable. But terrified and wrong are different things. Lily had gone back to drawing, apparently satisfied that the conversation had found its way somewhere. She had started a new building on the back of the receipt, this one with more floors than the first. Claire put her hand in her jacket pocket where the folded drawing was, left it there. My father is going to fight it, she said. Probably, Owen said. He has lawyers. So do you, Owen said. You're a CEO. You have a COO who's on your side and a board that hasn't moved yet, and a company you built yourself that's still yours. He shrugged. You have more than you think you do. She was quiet for a long time. The station moved around them, all those people going where they were going, indifferent and ordinary and unknowing. The big board ticked over. The 8:20 to Providence was boarding at Platform 4. I need to make some calls, Claire said finally. Okay, Owen said. Marcus first, she said, and then possibly an attorney. That sounds right, he said. She looked at Lily. Thank you for the building, she said. The one with me on the roof. Lily looked up. You looked good up there, she said. Claire pressed her lips together, nodded once. Owen stood, reached for Lily's backpack, and slung it over one shoulder. Platform 4, he told Lily. We're boarding. Lily gathered her drawings and tucked them into the front pocket of her backpack. She stood up, then reached out and briefly pressed Claire's hand again. The same two-finger touch, same easy certainty, and then moved to take Owen's. Bye, Claire, she said. Bye, Lily, Claire said. Owen looked at her one more time. She was already reaching for her phone, the set of her shoulders different than it had been the day before. Something in her spine that hadn't been there yesterday. Something that looked like a person remembering their own height. Good luck, he said. Thank you, she said. For the soup, and the rest of it. He nodded and let Lily pull him toward Platform 4. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. Some things you did by showing up and staying still long enough that another person remembered who they were. And then you got on the train. She called Marcus first. He picked up on the first ring, which told her he'd been waiting. Marcus almost never picked up on the first ring. It was a professional habit he'd developed early. Something about not appearing desperate, which Claire had always found mildly ridiculous, but had never argued with because Marcus's instincts about most things were sound. I'm not getting on the bus, she said. A pause. Not a surprised one. More like someone releasing a breath they'd been holding for a while. Okay, he said. I need you to block my father's access to the operational systems, she said. Effective today. Change the administrative passwords on the finance portal and the logistics dashboard. He's been using the temporary access we gave him in November, and I should have revoked it 6 months ago. I can do that by noon, Marcus said. Do it now, she said, before he figures out what's happening. Already opening the interface, he said. She could hear the keyboard in the background, the specific rapid rhythm of Marcus working, which was a sound she associated with problems being solved. She sat in the hotel room she'd checked out of 20 minutes ago but hadn't yet physically left, her bag by the door, her phone pressed to her ear, the window showing a slice of a Boston morning. Gray sky, the tops of buildings, a crane far off doing something slow and mechanical. "He's going to call you," she said. "He already does," Marcus said. "I'm polite. I tell him you're managing the situation. I've been doing that for 4 months." "I know," she said. "I should have said something sooner." "You weren't ready," he said. "You're ready now. That's what matters." She wasn't sure ready was the right word. Ready implied a state of preparation she didn't entirely feel. What she felt was more like someone who had reached the edge of the thing they'd been putting off, and discovered that the longer they looked at it, the less they could justify not doing it. It wasn't courage exactly. It was more like the absence of any remaining reason to stay still. "I need an attorney," she said. "Someone who handles disability rights and also business law. I need to know exactly what the limited power of attorney my father has actually covers and what it doesn't." "I have a name," Marcus said. "I've had it for 2 months in case you needed it." "Send it to me." "Already done. Her name is Dana Ferraro. She's at Kellner and Associates in Back Bay. She's expecting you to call." "I called her last week." Claire held the phone and stared at the crane in the distance. "You called her last week?" "I called her 2 months ago," Marcus said, "and last week to see if she was still available." She didn't say anything for a moment. Outside, a car passed below the window, its radio audible for half a second through the glass. Some song she didn't recognize. "Marcus?" she said. "Yeah." "Thank you," she said. "I mean it. I know I've been—" She stopped. "I know the last year has been difficult to work around." "You built the company," he said. "I work for the company. That means I work for you. There's nothing complicated about it." She ended the call and sat with the phone in her lap for a moment. Then she dialed Dana Ferraro. Owen's train to Providence left at 8:20 and arrived at 9:47, which was close enough to on time that he stopped tracking it. Carol was at the station. She always picked them up. It was one of the fixed coordinates of these visits. Carol in her battered Subaru with the dog hair on the back seat and the broken cup holder on the passenger side that she'd been meaning to fix for 3 years. Lily climbed in and immediately began telling Carol about Margaret the Blue Horse, and Carol listened with the particular attentiveness she gave to Lily, which was total and genuine, and one of the things Owen loved most about his sister. He got in the front seat and pulled the door closed. "You look like you slept 4 hours, Carol said. 5, Owen said. "Maybe 5.5. She looked at him for a second longer than necessary, reading something in his face that he hadn't put into words yet, and then she put the car in drive and pulled out of the station lot without saying anything else. Carol knew when to wait. They were 15 minutes down I-95 before she said, "The woman from the station." "Claire," he said, "you're thinking about her." "I'm thinking about whether she's okay," he said. "That's different." "Is it?" He looked out the window at the highway. The sky had cleared to something thinner and brighter than the morning had promised, that specific New England autumn light that made everything look slightly more vivid than it deserved to. "She's in a bad situation," he said. "Her father has been systematically taking control of her life since she got hurt, and she was about to just let it happen. Get on a bus and let it happen." "Was," Carol said. "I think so," he said. "I think she wasn't going to. This morning she seemed different, like she'd decided something." He paused. "I don't know. I won't know." "Does that bother you?" He thought about it honestly. "A little," he said. "Yeah." In the back seat, Lily had moved on from the horse and was now telling Carol about the soup at Callahan's and about how Claire had a view from the 24th floor and about the drawing she'd made of the building. Carol listened and made the right sounds, and Owen leaned against the window and watched the highway and let the conversation happen around him and didn't try to do anything with the feeling he was carrying. It wasn't a romantic thing. He didn't think that was what it was. It was more like watching someone almost miss the last train out of a place they needed to leave and not knowing for sure whether they'd made it. That kind of feeling. The kind that sat in your chest and didn't resolve cleanly. He'd had enough experience with things that didn't resolve cleanly. He knew how to carry them. Donna Ferraro was a small woman in her mid-40s with sharp eyes and the particular energy of someone who had spent 20 years in a field that required her to argue with powerful men and had come to find it something between a vocation and a sport. She wore glasses on a chain around her neck that she put on and took off, depending on whether she was reading or talking. And she had the habit of writing things down in a legal pad by hand as she listened, which Claire found oddly reassuring. It was the habit of someone who took words seriously. They met at Ferraro's office at 11 that morning. Claire had taken a cab, navigated the building's accessible entrance, which was around the side and required a key fob that the building's front desk provided with the small, unnecessary ceremony they always performed, and made it to the fourth-floor conference room with 20 minutes to spare, which she used to review the documents Marcus had emailed her. Ferraro came in exactly on time, shook Claire's hand with the decisive grip of someone who'd learned that handshakes mattered, poured herself coffee from the credenza without asking if Claire wanted any, and sat down across the table. "Your COO sent me the limited power of attorney your father filed in November," she said. "I've read it twice. It's narrower than he's been acting." "How narrow?" Claire asked. "It covers medical decision-making in the event of documented incapacity," Ferraro said. The operative word being incapacity. It does not cover financial decisions. It does not cover business operations. It does not give him legal authority to make decisions about your housing or your care arrangements unless you are documented as incapacitated by a licensed physician. She put her glasses on and looked at the document. "The care facility he's arranged, has any physician provided documentation of current incapacity?" "No," Claire said. "My doctor." "Doctor. Anand, she's been my physician for 3 years. Recommended outpatient physical therapy and regular check-ins. She never recommended residential care." "Does your father have a second opinion?" "He consulted someone," Claire said. "A Dr. Helms. I never met with him directly. My father met with him and provided a summary of my situation." Ferraro took her glasses off. "He provided a summary," she repeated. "Yes. Not an examination. A summary." "That's my understanding." Ferraro wrote something on her legal pad. "That document, the opinion from Dr. Helms, is the weakest link in your father's position," she said. "A medical opinion based on secondhand information with no direct examination of the patient, prepared on behalf of someone with a financial and familial interest in the outcome." She looked at Claire. "That doesn't hold, not in any proceeding I've been involved in." Claire felt something shift in her chest. Not relief. Too early for relief, but the small, solid feeling of finding a handhold on something. "He has resources," Claire said. "He's not going to accept this without a fight." "I know who your father is," Ferraro said evenly. "Edward Whitmore is a significant figure in Boston business circles, and he has very good attorneys. What he doesn't have is a legitimate legal claim to the decisions he's been making." She held Claire's gaze. "That matters. Resources and legitimacy are not the same thing." "What do I do first?" "First," Ferraro said, "you write a formal letter. I'll draft it. To the care facility informing them that you are rescinding your enrollment. Voluntarily, clearly, in writing, with your signature. That removes them from the picture." She made a note. "Second, we file to have the power of attorney reviewed and limited by the court. Given the circumstances, I would argue for a modification that restricts it to genuine medical emergencies only. That's a reasonable ask, and I don't think a judge would find it unreasonable." She paused. "Third, and this is important, you need to be visible. At work, in your capacity as CEO. The more you function in that role publicly and demonstrably, the more difficult it becomes for anyone to argue you're incapacitated." "My COO has been managing operations," Claire said. "Your COO has been keeping things running," Ferraro said. "That's different from you leading. Show up. Make decisions on record. Engage with the board." She looked at Claire steadily. "The disability doesn't change any of this. The law is clear on that. What you can and cannot do is your determination to make, not your father's." Claire held that for a moment. 14 months of being told in various gentle, concerned, well-meaning ways what she could and couldn't do, what was realistic and what wasn't, what the appropriate pace of recovery looked like, what the responsible choice was. 14 months of the architecture being built around her until she'd nearly forgotten the shape of her own judgment. "He's going to say I'm not stable," she said, "that I'm making rash decisions." "He probably will," Ferraro said. "People who lose control often describe the other person's independence as instability." She opened a folder. "Let's start with the letter to the facility." The letter took 40 minutes to draft, revise, and finalize. Claire read it 3 times, made 2 small changes to the phrasing, and signed it. Ferraro's assistant would send it by certified mail and email within the hour. Claire sat in the conference room after Ferraro stepped out to make a call, the signed letter on the table in front of her, and felt the weight of what she'd just done settle through her like something physical. It wasn't a small thing. It was the first thing she'd done in 14 months that moved directly against her father's plan, in writing, with witnesses. There was no taking it back. She put her hand in her jacket pocket. The folded receipt was still there. She took it out and unfolded it on the table. Lily's drawing, the building with the large windows and the small figure on the roof, slightly lopsided, perfectly clear in its meaning. She looked at it for a while. She thought about what Lily had said when she'd given it to her. "You looked good up there," said with the complete ease of a child who hadn't yet learned that you were supposed to be careful about what you said to people in wheelchairs. Said as simple fact, simple observation. You looked good up there, not in spite of the wheelchair, just up there, at the top, where she was supposed to be. She folded the receipt carefully and put it back in her pocket. Her father called at 12:47. She'd been expecting it. The letter had gone out. Ferraro had warned her it might prompt an immediate response, and her father had never been someone who waited when he felt he was losing ground. She sat in a small cafe near Ferraro's office, a half-eaten sandwich in front of her, and looked at the screen for 3 rings before she answered. "Claire?" His voice was the careful voice, the managing voice. "Dad," she said. "I got a notification from the facility," he said. "There seems to be some confusion about your enrollment." "There's no confusion," she said. "I'm not enrolling. I sent them a letter this morning." A pause. The kind of pause her father used when he was recalibrating his approach, which she'd spent enough years watching to recognize with precision. "Sweetheart," he said, "I think you're under a lot of stress right now. The travel delay, being alone in Boston overnight, that kind of disruption can affect judgment. I don't think you're thinking clearly about what's best for—" "I'm thinking very clearly," she said. "Claire, I've consulted an attorney," she said, "Dana Ferraro at Kellner and Associates. She's reviewed the power of attorney you filed in November. The scope of it does not cover the decisions you've been making." She kept her voice even. She was working hard to keep it even. "I'm not doing this out of anger, Dad. I want you to understand that. I'm doing this because I should have done it 6 months ago, and I didn't, and I need to now." Silence on the line. Not the recalibrating pause, something different, longer. "I'm trying to protect you," he said. His voice had changed. The careful layer had dropped, and underneath it was something raw, something she recognized as genuine. Her father was not a simple man. His love for her was real. She'd never doubted it. What she'd spent 14 months learning to doubt was whether his love was the same thing as his judgment. "I know," she said. "I know you are. But Dad, I don't need protection for my own life." "You were in a serious accident," he said. "You almost—" He stopped. She heard him breathe. "I sat in a hospital waiting room for 17 hours not knowing. Do you understand what that does to a person?" "Yes," she said softly. "I think I do." "I can't watch you get hurt again," he said. "I can't watch you take on more than you can handle, and that's my risk to take," she said. "It has to be. You can't carry it for me." Another silence, just shorter this time. "You'll let me know you're safe," he said. "At a minimum. You'll call me." "Yes," she said. "I'll call you." "I don't like this," he said. "I know," she said. "I'm sorry." She ended the call and put the phone down on the table and sat with the shaking in her hands that she hadn't been able to suppress. It wasn't fear exactly. It was the physical aftermath of doing something that mattered, the body's way of processing the energy of it. She pressed both palms flat on the table and breathed. The cafe was a normal amount of busy for a Thursday lunchtime. Someone at the counter was asking about the soup of the day. A man near the window was explaining something at length to someone on his earbuds, gesturing as he talked. The ordinary machinery of a city afternoon, continuing without reference to any particular person's crisis. She picked up her phone and texted Marcus. "Letter sent. Spoke to my father. I'm going to need a board meeting, next week if possible." His reply came in under a minute, already looking at calendars. "Wednesday morning?" She wrote back, "Wednesday morning." She picked up the other half of her sandwich and ate it because she needed to eat, and because doing something ordinary with her hands helped the shaking settle. She looked out the window at the street, at the people passing, at the buses, at a woman with a stroller navigating a curb cut, at the city doing its indifferent, relentless thing. She thought about Owen and Lily on the train to Providence. She thought about what Owen had said. Terrified and wrong are different things. And about the way he'd said it, without weight or drama, as a simple distinction that should have been obvious and somehow wasn't until someone said it plainly. She thought about the question she'd asked him, "What would you do?" and how he'd refused to answer it directly, because he'd understood that she didn't need his answer. She'd needed the question pressed back at her until she located her own. She'd located it. At 2 in the afternoon, she wheeled back into the extended stay hotel and asked the front desk to extend her room for the week. The woman at the desk, young, efficient, not unkind, processed the request without comment. Claire took the elevator to the ground floor, navigated to her room, opened the door, and sat by the window. She opened her laptop. She pulled up the Whitmore Logistics dashboard, the operational overview she hadn't been able to access directly for 8 months, the view of the company's full picture that her father had routed to himself on the grounds that she shouldn't have to worry about it. Marcus had restored her access that morning. She looked at the numbers. The company was solid, not perfect. There was a contracts renewal she needed to handle before the end of the quarter, and one of the regional distribution partners had been flagging late delivery metrics for 2 months that someone needed to address directly, but solid. The foundation she'd spent 6 years building was intact. She felt something she'd forgotten the shape of. Not pride exactly. More like recognition, like seeing something that belonged to her and remembering that it did. She started working. She worked for 3 hours straight, which was the first time she'd done that in 14 months. And it was not smooth or perfect. She'd been out of the operational details long enough that she needed to read back through context before she could act on anything. And twice she had to call Marcus to fill in the history of decisions made in her absence. The second time she called, she heard something in his voice that she thought might have been relief, though Marcus would have said it was just efficiency. At 5:15, her phone buzzed with a text from a number she didn't recognize. She almost ignored it. Then she read it. Owen Carter. Wanted to check in. Lily wants to know if Margaret made it into any other drawings. She stared at the screen, then she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Not the complicated, weighted, effortful feelings she'd been managing for months, but something lighter and simpler, something that lived in the neighborhood of warmth. She wrote back, "No more horse drawings yet. But the building is coming along. I went back to work today." She put the phone on the desk and went back to the logistics dashboard. 30 seconds later, her phone buzzed again. "Good," he'd written. "That's really good." She read it twice. Put the phone face down. Outside the window, Boston was doing what Boston did in the early evening of a clear October day. The light changing its angle, the streets changing their population, the city reorganizing itself between its daytime and nighttime versions with the efficient, unsentimental routine of a place that had been doing this for centuries and intended to keep doing it regardless of any individual person's particular turning point. She turned back to her screen. She had a company to run. The weekend in Providence turned out to be exactly what Owen had needed it to be, which was not eventful. Carol's house was a 2-story colonial in the East Side neighborhood, with a backyard that Lily treated as her personal territory the moment they arrived, and the 2 days passed in the low-key, reliable way of those visits. Lily and Carol's kids running the yard into the ground, Owen sitting at the kitchen table drinking coffee while Carol moved around him doing normal Saturday things, the two of them talking in the easy, overlapping way of people who'd known each other long enough that silence wasn't uncomfortable and unfinished sentences got finished. He told Carol more about Claire on Saturday evening, after the kids were in bed and Carol had opened a bottle of wine, and they were at the kitchen table with the particular permission that late evenings with family gave to honest conversation. He told her about the care facility, the father, the power of attorney, the company. He told her about Marcus and the attorney. He told her about the text on Thursday evening. Carol listened without interrupting, which was not her default mode, but which she deployed when the subject warranted it. "She went back to work the same day," Carol said when he finished. "Same afternoon," Owen said. "After all that." Carol turned her wine glass slowly in her hands. "That's not nothing." "No," Owen said. "And you texted her." "To check in," he said. "That's all it was." Carol looked at him the way she looked at him when she decided not to say the thing she was thinking, which paradoxically communicated the thing more effectively than saying it would have. Owen held up a hand. "I know," he said. "I didn't say anything." "You were thinking it loudly." She smiled. "I was thinking that you haven't checked in on anyone in a while," she said. "Not like that. Not someone outside the usual circle." She paused. "That's a good thing, Owen. That's actually a good thing." He looked at his coffee. He'd switched to coffee after one glass of wine because he was driving in the morning, which Carol had commented on as evidence of him becoming elderly, which he'd accepted as probably accurate. "She's in the middle of a complicated situation," he said. "The last thing she needs is—" "I didn't say anything about that either," Carol said. "You were about to." "I was going to say," Carol said patiently, "that you're a person who noticed another person was struggling and did something about it, and then followed up to make sure she was okay. That's not complicated. That's just decency." She looked at him. "You're allowed to have done a decent thing without turning it into a philosophical problem." Owen was quiet for a moment. Outside the kitchen window, the backyard was dark, the kids' bikes lying where they'd left them, the cedar fence around the perimeter doing its quiet job. "She's smart," he said. "Like, genuinely sharp in a way that's hard to describe. The way she talked about that company, the way she argued about history." "You argued about history with a CEO at a diner in Boston." "She had good points," he said. Carol laughed. "I like her already. You haven't met her." "Anyone who argues with you about history at a diner has my immediate respect," Carol said. "You're insufferable about history." He smiled despite himself. "I'm not insufferable." "You made Lily memorize the order of the presidents." "That was her idea." "She's 6. "She's an interested 6-year-old. Carol shook her head, still smiling, and refilled her glass. The kitchen was warm and smelled like the dinner they'd made 2 hours ago. Pasta, which had been Lily's request, obviously, and Owen sat with the warmth of it and let himself feel for a few minutes that things were reasonably okay. Not resolved, not finished, but okay in the way that mattered, which was that the people he loved were safe and nearby, and the world had not, in the final accounting, been unkind today. He texted Claire once more on Sunday before driving back to Boston. He wasn't sure why he did it, some instinct that the weekend was a boundary, and after it things would return to their usual shapes, and he didn't want to let the moment close without— he didn't know exactly. Without saying something. Heading back today. "How's the company?" Her reply came 2 hours later when he was halfway up I-95 with Lily asleep in the back seat. "Board meeting set for Wednesday. 3 contracts reviewed. 1 distribution problem identified and being addressed. Also, my father called twice. I answered once. He read it at a red light." Typed back, "How did that go?" A pause. Then, "Hard. But okay, he's angry and scared, and those 2 things look the same with him." He thought about what to write back. Settled on, "Yeah, that's how it usually is." She wrote, "Your sister feed you well?" He smiled. "Pasta. My daughter's orders. Good." That was the end of the exchange. He put the phone in his pocket and drove the rest of the way home with the specific, comfortable feeling of a conversation that had ended at the right moment, neither too soon nor too long, the way good conversations did. Monday arrived with the full weight of a school week. Owen was back at his desk by 7:15, 2 cups of coffee in, staring at the stack of ungraded essays from his junior class that had been waiting patiently for his return. The topic was the long-term domestic consequences of the Second World War, which the students had interpreted with varying degrees of engagement, ranging from genuinely interesting to what appeared to be structured around a single Wikipedia article that he recognized because he'd seen 3 versions of it already that year. He graded for 2 hours before first period, which got him through 12 of the 31 papers and a 3rd cup of coffee. His day was the regular kind, the good and difficult rhythms of teaching, which was a job that required constant presence and gave back in increments too small to see until you looked across a month or a year and noticed the accumulation. 3rd period was his AP class, 12 juniors who were actually reading the assignments and arguing with each other about them, which was the reason he'd gone into teaching and continued to be the reason on the days when the other 29 didn't remind him. He picked Lily up from school at 3:15. She had news about a conflict in her classroom involving a paint set and a disputed shade of purple, which she narrated with the detailed precision of a witness statement for the entire walk home. He listened and made the right noises and made her a snack and sat with her while she did homework, which at her grade level consisted mostly of practicing letters and a worksheet about counting that she finished in 4 minutes, and then decorated with elaborate border drawings. He was doing dishes after dinner when his phone buzzed. "Can I ask you something?" "Claire." "Sure," he wrote back. "There's a disability rights advocacy organization called the New England Access Coalition. Marcus found them. They have resources for people fighting guardianship and power of attorney overreach, housing resources, peer support networks, practical stuff." A pause, then another message. "Did you know about them when you mentioned disability rights attorneys?" He read it twice. He'd mentioned disability rights attorneys in general terms. He'd thought of it because a colleague at school, a paraprofessional named Denise who used a power wheelchair, had navigated a housing dispute the previous year and mentioned the process. He hadn't known the specific organization. "I didn't know that specific one," he wrote, "but that sounds like exactly what I was thinking of. Are they useful?" "Very. They have a housing specialist who can help me find accessible long-term housing in Boston. I've been in my father's property since the accident. I need my own place." Another pause. "I didn't think about that part until this morning. How much of my life is tied up in infrastructure he controls?" Owen read that and felt the weight of it. It was one thing to revoke a power of attorney. It was another to untangle 2 years of practical dependency piece by piece. "That's a lot to take apart," he wrote. "Yes, but it's mine to take apart." Then, "Thank you for the attorney idea. Even generally. Don't mention it." A minute passed. Then, "How's Lily?" He looked across the kitchen to where Lily was lying on the living room floor doing something with her colored pencils, a drawing in progress in front of her. "She's drawing," he wrote. "Possibly another building. Tell her the one she drew is still in my jacket pocket." He walked to the living room doorway. "Lily." She looked up. "Claire says the drawing is still in her jacket pocket." Lily absorbed this with the complete satisfaction of someone whose work has been properly received. "Good," she said, and went back to drawing. Owen relayed this. "Good," he wrote. Direct quote. He could almost feel her smile through the phone. "Giuma, c'est pas." Wednesday came with the particular edge of something that mattered. Claire was at the Whitmore Logistics offices by 7:30. The building was in the Seaport District, a glass-fronted 11-story building where they occupied the top 2 floors, the 24th and 25th, and the elevator opened directly into the reception area where the company logo was on the wall in brushed steel, and the receptionist, a young man named Patrick, who'd been with them for 2 years, looked up from his desk with an expression that went through surprise and landed on something close to relief. "Miss Whitmore," he said. "Morning, Patrick," she said. "Coffee?" "Already on it," he said. The office was familiar and strange at the same time, the way a room is when you've been away from it long enough. The layout was the same. The open-plan work floor with the cluster of desks and monitors, the glass-walled conference rooms, the corner office she'd never actually spent much time in because she preferred to work where the team was. But 14 months of absence had changed the small details. Different plants on the windowsills, someone's birthday decoration still half-taped to a divider wall, a new coffee machine in the kitchen that she didn't recognize. People looked up as she moved through. Some of them she knew well, some she'd hired but never properly worked alongside. They nodded. A few said good morning. Nobody made a production of it, which was the right call. She texted Marcus the night before to let the team know she'd be in and to please treat it as a normal day, not an event. And Marcus had clearly passed that on. Her office was at the far end of the floor. The view was what she remembered. Better than she'd remembered, actually. Or maybe she'd just forgotten how much it had meant to her, the way you forget the specific quality of something you've been away from long enough. She sat at her desk and put her coffee on the coaster that was still where she'd left it and opened her laptop and got to work. The board meeting was at 10. There were 7 board members. 3 of them her father had cultivated carefully over the past year. 2 of them she'd had solid relationships with before the accident and had allowed to atrophy. One of them, Bernard Cho, a logistics industry veteran in his 60s who'd been on the board since year 3, who had called her personally 3 weeks ago to say he was concerned about the direction of the conversations. The 7th was a newer addition, a woman named Priya Nair, who'd come on board 18 months ago and whose position on the current situation Claire hadn't been able to read. Marcus had given her the breakdown on Tuesday evening, sitting in the conference room at the extended stay hotel with 2 laptops and a half-eaten pizza between them, walking through each board member's likely position with the systematic care of someone mapping a battlefield. Henley and Marsh are your fathers, Marcus had said. They've been in his ear all year. Cho is yours. He called you. Ramirez has been quiet, which I think means he's uncomfortable but uncommitted. Park will follow whoever makes the stronger case in the room. Nair, he'd paused. I don't know. She's smart and she plays things close. Don't assume either way. 4 I need, Claire had said. 4 you need, Marcus had confirmed. She walked into the boardroom at 9:58. 7 faces looked at her, some with the careful neutrality of people managing their reactions, some with more visible relief, and 2, Henley and Marsh, exactly as Marcus had predicted, with expressions that she categorized as concerned in the specific way of people who'd been told to be concerned on someone else's behalf. She took her place at the head of the table. Good morning, she said. Thank you for making time on short notice. I'll be direct about why we're here. She'd prepared thoroughly. She'd worked on the presentation with Marcus until 11 the previous night, 2 drafts discarded before they found the one that was right. Not defensive, not combative, but clear. Specific. The kind of document that made its case through evidence rather than emotion, which was how she'd always built things. She walked them through it. The company's current financial position, solid, Q3, tracking above projection, the operational overview Marcus had maintained, the 2 key contracts that needed board-level awareness before Q4, the distribution issues she'd identified, and the remediation plan already in motion. She was 45 minutes into a full operational briefing before she addressed the other matter directly. I'm aware, she said, that there have been conversations over the past several months about my capacity to lead this company. I want to address that directly. She looked around the table, making deliberate eye contact. I've been assessed by my physician, Dr. Anand, who has confirmed that I am fully capable of resuming my role. The limited power of attorney filed by my father in November has been reviewed by my attorney and covers medical decisions and documented incapacity only. I am not incapacitated. I am back. She paused. I built this company. I know its operations, its people, and its trajectory better than anyone in this room. I'm asking this board to confirm my position so that we can get back to the work. Henley spoke first, which she'd expected. Claire, nobody is questioning your intelligence or your commitment to this company. The concern, she said, has been shaped primarily by my father, who has a strong personal interest in a particular outcome, and who is operating under a power of attorney that does not cover the scope of decisions he's been making. She kept her voice level. I respect that those conversations were had in good faith. I'm asking that this board now make its decision based on what's in front of you. My operational record before the accident, the company's current performance, and what you've just seen in the last 45 minutes. Bernard Cho said, I've seen enough. I'll move to confirm the CEO's full return to active leadership. Let's vote. Priya Nair, who hadn't spoken yet, looked at the financial summary on the table in front of her. She'd been reading it the whole time Claire had been presenting, not performatively, but with the focused attention of someone running the numbers for real. She looked up. Seconded, Nair said. The vote was 5-2. Afterward, in the hallway outside the boardroom, Marcus handed her a coffee and stood beside her and didn't say anything for a moment. She appreciated that. Nair, Claire said. I didn't see that coming either, Marcus said. She was reading the whole time. Apparently she liked what she read. Claire looked out the window at the end of the hall, the city below, the harbor beyond it, the October sky doing its bright, brittle thing. She felt tired in the specific way of things that have cost something real. Not bad tired, just the honest exhaustion of a hard thing done. My father's going to hear about this today, she said. Probably within the hour, Marcus said. He'll call Ferraro, she said, or his attorneys will. Yes, Marcus said. Let them, she said. Ferraro called at 2 in the afternoon to say that Edward Whitmore's attorney had been in touch, and that the contact had been what Ferraro described as exploratory. A lawyer's word for, they're finding out how serious we are. The answer, Ferraro had communicated clearly, was very serious. He's not going to let this go without at least one more push, Ferraro said. I want you prepared for that. I'm prepared, Claire said. He may try to escalate to a formal capacity evaluation through the courts, Ferraro said. Requested by a family member. It's a mechanism that exists. Can he succeed? He'd need more than one second-hand medical opinion, Ferraro said. And given that you conducted a 45-minute board presentation this morning and 5 board members voted to confirm your leadership, a capacity argument is going to have a difficult time gaining traction. A pause. You did the right thing going back today, visibly, on record, with witnesses. I know, Claire said. After she hung up, she sat at her desk, in her office, with her view, and opened the middle drawer. It was mostly as she'd left it, a few pens, a stapler, a notepad from a conference 3 years ago. In the back of the drawer was a folded piece of paper she'd put there herself, the day she'd moved into this office. A handwritten note from herself. She'd read about someone doing it once, leaving yourself a message for the hard days from the version of you that still believed in things. It said, "You built this. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." She'd written it at 26, 2 years into the company, coming off a brutal quarter that had almost ended everything. She'd forgotten it was there. She sat with it in her hands for a while. Then she put it back in the drawer and sent Owen a text. 5 to 2, she wrote. I'm back. His reply came in 6 minutes, which she calculated meant he was between classes. 5 to 2 is a good margin. It felt better than I expected, she wrote. It usually does, he wrote back. Then, are you okay? She thought about the question. The real answer was complicated. She was tired and her hands had a faint tremor that she recognized as her body processing adrenaline, and there was still the legal process with her father ahead of her, and housing to find, and 14 months of absence to account for in every professional relationship that had frayed in that time. There was work ahead that she couldn't fully see the shape of yet. But she was at her desk. She was running her company. She'd found the note she'd written to herself at 26, and it still applied. Yes, she wrote. I think I actually am. She put the phone down and pulled up the distribution problem she'd flagged on Thursday. She had calls to make. The regional partner in Manchester who needed a direct conversation, 2 clients whose quarterly reviews were overdue, a team lead who'd been holding things together without proper support for months and deserved acknowledgement that went beyond an email. She started with the Manchester call. The conversation was difficult in the specific way of having to establish authority you'd been absent from. There were gaps, wrong assumptions that had calcified into habits, some quiet resentment she had to navigate carefully. It took 40 minutes and she came out of it with a plan and a headache and the solid feeling of having done the actual work rather than managing around it. She made the next call. Outside her window, the city went about its ordinary afternoon. The harbor was flat and dark under the October sky, the boats sitting still on it, the buildings across the water showing their lit windows as the afternoon shifted toward evening. She'd looked at that view on 1,000 mornings before the accident and never quite registered how much she needed it, the way you don't know you need air until you haven't had enough. She had it now. She made the 3rd call, and the 4th, and kept working until the office had emptied around her and the light through the windows had turned to the amber of early evening, and the city below had switched to its nighttime version, and she was still there, doing the things she'd spent 6 years building the ability to do. Nobody had taken that from her. She hadn't let them. The court filing came on a Monday, 3 weeks after the board vote. Claire had been expecting it. Ferraro had warned her, had walked her through the likely timeline, had said he'll need to make one more move because not making it would mean accepting that he lost. And Ferraro had been right. Edward Whitmore, through his attorneys at Carver and Stein, filed a petition for formal capacity evaluation with the Suffolk County Probate Court, citing concerns about his daughter's ability to manage her personal and professional affairs in the wake of a serious physical trauma. Claire read the filing at her desk on a Tuesday morning with her coffee going cold beside her and the harbor visible through the window and the measured professional voice of Ferraro in her ear summarizing the language. It's thinner than I expected, Ferraro said. The supporting documentation is the Helms opinion and a declaration from your father. That's it. No current medical testimony, no pattern of documented impaired decision-making, nothing from your professional context. A pause. The board vote actually hurts him more than he probably anticipated. 5 of 7 directors confirming your leadership 2 weeks ago is not consistent with a picture of someone who can't manage their affairs. What do we file back? Claire asked. Everything, Ferraro said. Dr. Anand's assessment, the board resolution, your operational record since you returned, revenue figures, contracts executed, personnel decisions. Marcus can compile the business documentation. I'll handle the legal response. She paused. And we file a counter motion to have the limited power of attorney formally restricted by the court. We were going to do this anyway. The timing is actually fine. How long? Hearing in 6 to 8 weeks, Ferraro said. Possibly sooner if the judge looks at what he filed and decides it doesn't warrant the full process. Claire put the phone down and looked at the filing on her screen. She read it twice more, slowly, the way she read contracts, looking for the shape of the argument beneath the language. What she found, when she stripped away the legal phrasing, was her father's fear. It was in every paragraph. The accident had broken something in him that he'd tried to fix by making her smaller, more contained, more protected, and now she was refusing to stay contained, and he didn't know what to do with that except escalate. She understood it. She'd been trying to understand it for a year. Understanding it didn't make it acceptable. Those were two different things. But it made it human, which mattered, because her father was not a villain, and she'd made peace with the complexity of that. She called Marcus. I need the Q3 revenue summary, all contracts executed since October 1st, and the resolution of the Manchester distribution issue documented with outcomes. Can you get that to Ferraro by Thursday? Wednesday, Marcus said. Wednesday, she said. Then she went back to work. The texts with Owen had become a regular thing, which had happened without either of them formally deciding it would. It was mostly practical at first, so he'd sent her the name of the New England Access Coalition contact. She'd followed up with results. He'd asked how the board meeting went. She'd told him. But it had extended past the practical into the territory of ordinary conversation, the kind that exists between people who've discovered they think about things in compatible ways and find it useful to have a thinking partner. He told her about his students, the AP class that was actually reading things, the junior who'd submitted an essay arguing that the Cold War was fundamentally a real estate dispute and had done it convincingly enough that Owen had given him a B+ despite disagreeing with the thesis. She told him about the company, the Manchester situation resolved, a new distribution contract signed with a manufacturing co-op in western Massachusetts that she was proud of in the specific way of deals that were also right, not just profitable. Lily occasionally contributed to the thread. Owen would hand her the phone, and she'd type something with the characteristic disregard for punctuation of a first grader. Claire, did you know penguins have knees, or we had pasta again, Dad's getting lazy. And Claire would respond directly, and with the same seriousness Lily brought to the penguin question, which Owen had observed she'd done from their first conversation. She talked to Lily like Lily was a person whose questions deserved real answers. It was not a small thing. 3 weeks after the filing, Owen texted, How are you holding up with the court thing? She was at her desk, evening, the office empty, the harbor doing its nighttime thing. She thought about the answer. Some days fine. Some days it's like, you keep thinking you've dealt with something, and then it's still there. She paused, then added, It's not the legal process that's hard. Ferraro has it. It's the other part. The part where it's your dad, he wrote. Yeah, the part where it's my dad. A pause, then, that doesn't get clean. You know that, right? It just gets more manageable. She read it twice. It was the kind of thing that was easy to get wrong, easy to make either too soft or too blunt. And he'd gotten it exactly right, which she'd noticed he did with some regularity. I know, she wrote. I'm learning the difference. Then, Lily says hi, by the way. She's been drawing buildings. Tell her I'm still on the 24th floor. She'll find that very satisfying. The housing situation resolved in a way that was both better and harder than she'd anticipated. The New England Access Coalition's housing specialist, a methodical woman named Teresa who spoke in complete sentences and wrote everything down and followed up on every lead within 24 hours, had found 3 accessible apartments in Boston within Claire's price range by the end of the first week. The best of them was in the South End, a 2-bedroom on the 2nd floor of a building that had been retrofitted well, wide doorways, a roll-in shower, an elevator that was actually maintained, a street-level entrance with no steps. It was more expensive than she would have chosen freely. It was hers. The hard part was the conversation with her father about leaving his property. She had it on a Sunday afternoon in person at the house in Brookline where she'd been living for 14 months. The house where she'd grown up part-time after her parents' divorce, which had always felt like her father's territory rather than hers, which in retrospect was part of why she'd accepted it as a place to recover without examining that acceptance too closely. Her father was in the kitchen when she got there, making the elaborate Sunday lunch he'd always made, the kitchen smelling of garlic and the specific domestic comfort of a man who expressed love through food. He was 71 years old. He was not a large man. He'd gotten smaller in the years since her mother left, the particular shrinkage of people who spend a lot of time alone, the way the body adjusts to the space it's given. He had her dark hair, now mostly gray. He had the hands of a former engineer, large and precise, and the habit of keeping them busy when he was uncomfortable. He was making pasta sauce when she came in, stirring it with the focused attention of someone who wasn't looking at you. "You wanted to talk," he said. "Yes," she said. She told him about the apartment. He listened with his back to her, stirring. When she finished, he was quiet for a while. The sauce made its small bubble and hiss. "When?" he said. "3 weeks," she said. He turned from the stove. He looked at her, not with the managing expression, not with the concern that was control, with something older and raw, the expression she'd seen in the hospital room when she'd first woken up, the one she'd held on to for so long. "I know I've made mistakes," he said. "I know that's—" He stopped. "I don't know how to explain to you what it was like. The accident. Being in that waiting room." "I know, Dad," she said. "I didn't know how to—" His voice wasn't steady. He was not a man who fell apart easily. She'd seen it twice in her life before today. "I didn't know how to let you be in danger again, so I tried to make it so you couldn't be." "I know," she said again, more gently this time. "I went too far," he said. It cost him something, those 4 words. She could see what it cost. "Yes," she said. She didn't cushion it. Cushioning it would have been a different kind of disrespect. He turned back to the stove, stirred the sauce. His shoulders were a shape she knew, the shape of someone holding themselves together with the effort of it. "The apartment in the South End," he said, after a while. "Is it a good building?" "Very good," she said. "Well maintained. Good neighbors," the housing specialist said. "You'll tell me the address?" "Yes." "And you'll call," he said. "Not just when things are wrong, just call." "I will," she said. They ate lunch together. It was not comfortable in the easy way of before, but it was honest. And honest was something she'd learned to value above comfortable, because comfortable could be built out of almost anything, including things that were bad for you, while honesty had to be earned and maintained. When she left, he stood at the front door watching her go down the ramp he'd had installed when she first came home. The ramp she'd found infantilizing at the time, but now understood had been built with his hands, by a man who didn't know what else to do with fear except build something against it. She didn't look back. But she thought about that ramp the whole drive to the South End, what it meant and what it cost, and how love could be the right thing done in entirely the wrong way, and how those 2 facts could sit together without canceling each other out. The hearing was on a Thursday in December, 6 weeks after the filing. Ferraro had been right about the thinness of the case. Claire sat in the courtroom. Suffolk County Probate, 3rd floor, the specific institutional beige of public buildings everywhere, and watched the judge read through the filings with the expression of someone who had done this many times and was forming a clear opinion early. Edward Whitmore sat across the courtroom with his attorneys. He was in a good suit. He looked like what he was, a powerful man who had never expected to be in this position, arguing this case against his own daughter. He didn't look at her. She looked at him once, and then at Ferraro, who was arranging her documents with the unhurried precision of someone who knew exactly what she had. The judge, a woman named Honorable Patricia Dunn, who had a reputation Ferraro had described as demanding, fair, and efficient, and not in that order, asked Edward Whitmore's attorneys 2 direct questions about the basis for the capacity claim. The first was about the Helms opinion and whether any direct examination had been conducted. The second was about the timeline, specifically whether the petition had been filed before or after the board vote confirming Claire's executive leadership. The answers to both questions were not helpful to her father's position. Judge Dunn called a recess and came back 20 minutes later. "I'm going to be direct," she said, which was a phrase that courtrooms tended to treat as a signal to pay attention. "The petitioner has presented a medical opinion based on second-hand information from a family member with no direct clinical examination, no current behavioral evidence of incapacity, and no professional documentation of impaired decision-making. Against this, the respondent has presented a physician's direct assessment, a 5-2 board confirmation of executive capacity dated October 15th, documented business decisions executed in the weeks following, and a counter motion regarding the scope of the existing power of attorney. She looked at both tables. The petition is dismissed. Regarding the counter motion, I'm granting the restriction. The power of attorney filed November 14th of last year is hereby limited to acute medical emergencies requiring immediate intervention, requiring written physician certification at the time of invocation. It does not extend to residential, financial, or professional decisions. She looked at her papers. We're adjourned. It was over in the time it takes to drink a cup of coffee. Outside the courtroom, in the hallway, Ferraro shook Claire's hand with the decisive grip and said, "That went about as well as it could." "Yes," Claire said. "Your father's attorneys will likely recommend he accept this," Ferraro said. "Filing anything further would cost more than it could possibly achieve." "I know," Claire said. She sat in the hallway for a few minutes after Ferraro left, the courtroom sounds filtering through the door, the building making its institutional sounds around her. She thought she might feel something more dramatic than she felt. What she actually felt was tired and quiet, and underneath those things, something solid that she'd been building toward for 2 months. Not triumph, because triumph wasn't the right word for winning an argument you should never have had to have, but something more durable. Something like the end of a long effort. She took out her phone and called Marcus. "It's done," she said. "Good," he said. And then, "Come back to the office. We have a contract meeting at 2, and I've been holding it for you." She almost laughed. "Yeah," she said. "I'll be there." She texted Owen from the cab. "It's done." Court dismissed the petition. Power of attorney restricted. His reply was immediate this time. No gap between classes. "That's it? It's actually done?" "It's actually done." A pause. Then, "How do you feel?" She thought about it honestly, because that was the only way she'd learned to answer that question. "Tired," she wrote. "And okay. Really okay, I think. For the first time in a while." "Good," he wrote. Then, "Lily is going to want to celebrate." Fair warning, what does that look like? Last time she celebrated something, she made me buy a cake from the bakery 2 blocks over, and then she ate 2 bites of it. That sounds about right. I'll let her know. She'll probably want to draw something. Claire smiled at her phone in the back of the cab. Outside the window, Boston was doing its December thing. The cold that came off the harbor, the early dark of the short days, the city lights making everything look a little more deliberate against the dark sky. She'd lived in this city her whole adult life, and she'd spent the last 14 months being driven through it in other people's cars, never quite at home in it. Today it looked like hers again. She put her phone in her bag and watched the streets go past, and let herself feel the fullness of that without trying to manage it into something smaller. The apartment in the South End had good light in the mornings. She'd been there 6 weeks when she noticed this properly. The specific quality of winter morning light through the east-facing windows. The way it came in low and flat and turned the kitchen into something warmer than it had any right to be in December. She'd started making coffee at 6:30 before the workday started, just to have that 20 minutes of morning light and quiet before everything else began. Her life had a different shape now than it had in October, and a very different shape than it had in the 14 months before that. She went to the office 4 days a week. She did PT twice a week with a therapist she'd found herself, not through her father's network, a direct and pragmatic woman named Soraya, who didn't traffic in false optimism, but who was precise and consistent, and whose approach was working in the measurable way that mattered. She called her father every Sunday. The calls were shorter than they'd once been and carried a different weight, less performed, more real, the awkward honesty of 2 people relearning how to talk to each other after a rupture that neither of them had fully seen coming. It was not resolved in any clean or final sense. Families didn't resolve. They adjusted, and sometimes the adjustments held, and sometimes they didn't, and you kept making them. Her father had not filed anything further. He had, 3 weeks after the hearing, sent her a letter, handwritten, which was not something she'd seen from him since she was a child, that did not use the word sorry, but which covered in his precise engineer's prose everything that word contained. She had read it 4 times and put it in the same desk drawer where she kept Lily's drawing of the building. The company was doing well. The Q4 numbers were strong, better than projected, which was the result of the Manchester problem being resolved, the new manufacturing co-op contract, and 3 weeks of her full attention on the pipeline work that Marcus had been carrying alone for too long. Priya Nair had reached out after the board meeting, suggested a coffee, and turned out to be someone whose thinking Claire found genuinely useful, sharp, and skeptical in the way that made ideas better, not in the way that made them smaller. They'd had coffee twice and were having it again next week. Bernard Cho had sent her a bottle of wine after the hearing with a note that said, "Welcome back, don't make us worry again." She'd sent back a note that said, "I'll try," which was the only honest answer. Owen brought Lily to the South End on a Saturday in January. It had been Claire's idea, which she'd offered and then immediately wondered about in the way of people who'd spent 14 months second-guessing every social impulse. But the invitation had felt right in the way that things feel right when they come from somewhere honest rather than somewhere anxious, and Owen had said yes without a pause that suggested he was managing her feelings about the invitation, which was the right way to say yes. They came at noon. Lily arrived with a drawing rolled up carefully under one arm and the focused energy of a child who had a purpose. The apartment was on the second floor. Claire had the elevator code texted to Owen before they arrived, and they came up that way, and when she opened the door, Lily walked in and looked around with the assessing attention she apparently brought to most environments. "It's nice," Lily said. "The windows are big." "They are," Claire said. "I like big windows," Lily said. "Dad says windows are important." "I didn't say that exactly," Owen said. "You said light was important," Lily said, "and light comes through windows. So." Owen looked at Claire. "She does this." "I know," Claire said. "I like it." She'd made coffee and bought the kind of cookies that came from an actual bakery rather than a bag, which felt like the right level of effort for this specific occasion, and they sat at the kitchen table in the good morning light that lasted into early afternoon on the south-facing side, and talked in the easy way they'd been talking for 3 months in text, and which turned out to translate intact to an actual room. Owen looked different in person than he did in the image she'd constructed from their conversations. Not wrong, just more specific. He was wearing a gray sweater and had the slightly rumpled quality of someone who'd gotten up early and made a child breakfast and hadn't spent significant energy on his own presentation. He was comfortable in a room, which was a quality she'd noticed at the station too. The ease of someone who didn't require the room to arrange itself around them. They talked about the company's Q4 numbers, which Owen asked about with genuine curiosity rather than the polite interest people perform when they didn't actually care. They talked about his AP class, which had gotten to the period he described as the most interesting to teach. The post-war years, the rapid restructuring of global order, the way large historical events were actually made of thousands of small human decisions that people had made without knowing they were making history. Lily ate 3 cookies and showed Claire the drawing she'd brought, which was of the South End apartment building. She'd looked it up, apparently, had asked Owen to show her what it looked like, and had drawn it from the photograph with the earnest precision of a 7-year-old, the windows disproportionately large because she'd understood they were important. "This is very accurate," Claire said. Lily looked satisfied. "I drew it from a picture," she said. "I wanted to get it right." "You did," Claire said. She put it on the refrigerator. Lily watched this happen with the expression of someone seeing their work properly placed, and then returned to her cookie. At some point, the afternoon had moved in the way good afternoons move without tracking. Lily had relocated to the living room floor where she'd arranged herself with the pad of paper Claire had found in a kitchen drawer, and was drawing something new, leaving the 2 adults at the table with their coffee going lukewarm in the good winter light. "She's going to be something," Claire said, looking toward the living room. "I know," Owen said. "I don't know what yet. She keeps changing the plan." "She has good instincts," Claire said. "She notices what matters." "She does," Owen said. "She got that from—" He paused. "From her mother, mostly. Rebecca noticed everything." It was the first time he'd said Rebecca's name in her presence. She held it the way she'd learned to hold things, present with it, not rushing past it. "She sounds like someone worth having learned from," Claire said. Owen looked at his coffee. "She was," he said. "She was impatient and she hated mornings and she had the worst taste in movies of anyone I've ever known. And she noticed everything. She would have noticed you in about 30 seconds. What would she have noticed?" He thought about it. "That you were trying very hard to seem like you were fine when you weren't," he said, and she would have found a way to ask about it that didn't feel like an interrogation. He paused. Lily learned that part too, the question without the pressure. "She did," Claire said. They were quiet for a moment. The apartment held the quiet comfortably. It was one of the things she'd come to appreciate about it, the way it didn't amplify silence into discomfort. "I want to say something," Claire said, "and I want to say it directly." Owen looked at her. "What happened at the station?" she said. "What you did. It wasn't a big thing, in the sense of it being dramatic. You didn't rescue me. You didn't fix anything." She held his gaze. "You just stayed. You asked questions, and you stayed, and you didn't try to make any of it easier than it was." She paused. "I've been trying to figure out how to tell you what that was worth, and I don't think I have the right words for it. But I wanted you to know that I know." Owen was quiet for a moment, not uncomfortable, processing, the way she'd learned he did. "You did the work," he said. "Everything that happened after the station was you. I asked a question and got on a train." "The question mattered," she said. "Okay," he said. "Then I'm glad I asked it." "How did you know to ask it?" she said. "That specific question. Is that what you want? Not, are you okay, or what's wrong, or can I help? Just, is that what you want?" He thought about it. Really thought about it. The way she'd noticed he did when a question deserved more than a surface answer. "When Rebecca died," he said, "people kept asking me if I was okay and telling me what I needed and trying to help in ways that were genuinely kind and completely wrong for what I actually needed." He turned his coffee mug in a slow circle. "What I needed was someone to ask me what I actually wanted. Not what I was supposed to want, not what made sense from the outside, just what did I want?" He paused. "My sister eventually figured that out, about 8 months in. So I guess I learned it from being on the receiving end of when it was missing." Claire was quiet for a moment. "I'm sorry," she said. "About Rebecca." "Thank you," he said, simply, without deflection. From the living room, Lily said, without looking up from her drawing, "Dad, what's the name of the horse I drew in October?" "Margaret," Owen said. "I'm drawing her again," Lily said. "She's in front of Claire's building." "Is she still blue?" Claire called. "Obviously," Lily said. There were things Claire understood now that she hadn't understood in October, sitting in South Station with her phone face down and the weight of a future she hadn't chosen pressing down on every hour. She understood that the hardest thing about being controlled by someone who loved you was that you had to grieve both the control and the love at the same time. And those two griefs had different shapes, and you couldn't do them in the right order, you just did them simultaneously and badly and kept going. She understood that returning to work after a long absence was not a single moment but a daily choice, made again every morning, and that some mornings it cost more than others. And that didn't mean something was wrong, it just meant it was real. She understood that the people who had helped her most in the past 4 months had not been the ones who tried to fix the situation, but the ones who stayed present inside it. Ferraro with her legal pad and her precise voice, Marcus with his Wednesday morning calendar and his loyalty, Teresa at the Housing Coalition, who had followed up on every lead without being asked, and Owen, who had asked a single honest question in a train station and then gotten on a train, and who had kept showing up in the small daily way of texts and conversations, and one Saturday afternoon with good light and coffee, and a child drawing a blue horse named Margaret on the floor. She understood that control and care were not the same thing, and that knowing they were different didn't make the people who'd confused them into enemies. Her father was not her enemy. He was a man who had been afraid and had acted from that fear for longer than was okay, and the work of repairing their relationship would take the kind of time that couldn't be scheduled or rushed, and she was willing to do that work because he was her father, and because she was not the kind of person who left things unfinished. She understood, finally, that the wheelchair was not the thing her father had been responding to. The wheelchair had been there, visible, undeniable, requiring adjustments she'd made and would keep making. But what her father had actually been responding to was the reminder that she could be lost, that life could take her from him in a moment. The wheelchair was just the form that fear had found to act through. Naming that didn't make his actions right. It made them human. She had been angry for a long time, and she was learning what came after anger, which was not peace exactly, but something that could work alongside grief and confusion and still let you get on with things. That was, she suspected, what most people meant when they talked about moving forward. Not that the hard things stopped being true, but that they stopped being the only thing you could see. Owen and Lily left in the late afternoon, when the winter light had shifted from gold to the flat gray of early evening. Lily hugged Claire at the door, an abrupt, full-contact hug of the kind that children gave when they decided a person was worth it, and then stepped back and looked at her with the direct assessment she'd shown since the station.
You seem different than you did in October, Lily said. Different how? Claire asked. Lily considered it seriously. More like yourself, she said. Owen looked at his daughter with the expression he got when she did the thing where she was more accurate than she had any business being. He looked at Claire. She's not wrong, he said. No, Claire said. She's really not. They went down the elevator and she stood at her door listening to the building's sounds settle back around her. Through the window at the end of the hall, she could see the street below. The cars going past, a couple walking a dog, the ordinary life of a city evening continuing without reference to any particular person's turning point. She went back inside. She stood at the kitchen window for a moment with a fresh cup of coffee, looking out at the street, at the light from the other buildings, at the dark sky above the city. Her phone buzzed. Owen, Lily says the drawing is a gift for the new apartment. She wants to make sure you know that. Claire looked at the refrigerator, at the drawing of the building held up by two magnets she'd found in a kitchen drawer, the windows large and deliberate, the proportions of a child's honest eye. Tell her it's exactly where it belongs, she wrote back. She put the phone down and drank her coffee and stood at the window and let the evening be what it was. There was no single moment when a life changed course. That was the thing nobody told you, that the turning point, when you looked back at it, was always smaller than it felt, always more ordinary. A train delay, a canceled service, a booth at a diner with soup and a child asking honest questions. The smallest possible chain of events amounting to a different future. She had rebuilt her life in 4 months. Not cleanly, not without cost, not without the ongoing work that would continue in the weeks and months ahead. The relationship with her father still finding its new shape. The company still requiring the daily reinvestment of attention and judgment. The legal matter closed, but its aftermath still settling. None of it done in the sense of finished, all of it done in the sense of in her own hands. The city moved below her window. The harbor was out there somewhere in the dark. The same harbor she looked at from the 24th floor on the days when she stood at the office window at 6 in the morning and felt the shape of everything she'd built and everything she still wanted to build. She was back in that building. She'd kept the view. She'd done that herself, with her own hands, from the wreckage of a year that had tried to convince her she couldn't. And what she knew now, standing in her own apartment with the drawing on her refrigerator and the city doing its indifferent, beautiful thing below her window, was this. The person who had built the company at 24, who had gone back to 3 clients with evidence and changed their minds, who had sat in an ICU and woken up and kept going. That person had never left. She'd been there the whole time, waiting for someone to ask the right question, not to rescue her, just to ask. The rest she'd done herself, the rest she would keep doing. That was, it turned out, how it worked.